We're back with the panel. If you ask how long it's been since we talked, I won't say who cares because I'm always happy to see them. The House of Commons is back. Um, Everyone's had a chance to go back to their writings and think about their choices, and now they're going to they're here until Christmas, and we've got a lot to talk about. Welcome to Garry, Marci, Allison.
Good to be
And the
here.
first thing I do want to talk about is that thing where Mark Carney was in Johannesburg and he was asked, how long has it been since you talked to Donald Trump? And he replied, who cares? I don't have any burning issues I need to talk to him about. Well, the Conservative caucus is having puppies over this. And I figure, Garry, you might be the first one to want to talk about that. Is that the correct answer to the question, when is the last time a Canadian Prime Minister talked to a US president?
Well, I think that just goes to show how brittle Mark Carney is in dealing with the media. It's just one more example of how testy he can be. I mean, we think back to the election campaign when he told Rosemary Barton to go look within herself when he didn't like the tone and tenor of the question. There's lots of other examples from the campaign and the subsequent time as prime minister. And my conservative brain always chortles a little bit, given how much ink and time is spent deconstructing conservative leaders' interactions with the media. I might even suggest there's a double standard here, but nevertheless. There's also probably a contrast ad in here between Carney saying, who cares, and Poilievre saying, I care. That could be used in a variety of different ways, not just in the Canada-US relationship, but talking about a whole bunch of different issues. At the same time, look, there is clear public opinion in large parts of this country, especially in vote-rich places in this country, in Ontario, that are fine with any public posture that tells Trump to go shove it. So whether it's the Reagan ad or this kind of posture, and so this is the reality of what we're all dealing with here. And I think at some point, the lack of, the question is, what is the difference between elbows up and who cares, and where is that sweet spot? At some point, I do think it probably hurts Mark Carney, but I'm not sure we're there yet because I think a vast swath of the Canadian electorate feels that negotiating with Donald Trump is like nailing Jello to the wall. So I'm of a couple of minds of it, and in short, it's complicated.
That's our proof that you're not in the caucus, Garry, because the MPs are saying it's just like the heavens are falling. And I saw someone on Twitter saying that Mark Carney's gaslighting the Canadian people. You get elected on the a promise of elbows up, and then you say, basically, look, it'll take care of itself, or it doesn't need my eye on it, or anything like that. And I kind of get the ambiguity that the prime minister is representing there, but I do think he's having a hell of a hard time explaining how you can be preoccupied with Washington this week and then claiming to be kind of cool with whatever happens the next week. Is it?
Uh, I guess the question is it hurting him?
Yeah.
And the other side to this is it's essentially still a dead heat. Liberals 40, conservatives 38, depending on which poll you look like, or there's a little bit of movement in there. But this isn't like he has a massive majority government. So I'll be interested to see over the next few days and weeks if polling starts to move on this, and if there's any questions specifically about this reaction.
Marcy Surkes, what do you make of all of this?
At the risk of being the first to make a Katy Perry reference, it's hot and it's cold. It's yes and it's no. I mean, look, in all seriousness, the conversation that the Prime Minister was engaged in with the President up to a number of weeks ago, was a really serious conversation about finding some relief, some sectoral specific relief on the tariffs that are hurting key industries in this country. It is a real and ongoing problem for this government that there has been no relief. I believe that Mr. Carney was taking those conversations and had instructed everyone around him to take those conversations extremely seriously. The nature of those conversations, unlike anything we have ever really experienced in terms of international negotiations, but parking the oddity of dealing with the Trump administration on trade, that is still a real pressing issue. And I actually wouldn't take Mr. Carney's comments over the weekend as being dismissive. he is clearly playing the game, the art of the deal, the negotiation. I mean, to borrow again from Katy Perry, like he is playing it a bit cool. There is a reason we have to believe, I have to believe, there's a reason why he is doing that. It is always that you become more appealing to the other if you are seemingly losing interest. And I think that's part of the strategy of what he put out over the weekend. But just because he is putting that out there via the media, and I think, look, Garry's not wrong. Some of the media, there is some media training that still needs to take place. But part of the the rationale in terms of playing it that way, playing it cool publicly, is twofold. The first is, as Garry said quite rightly, there is considerable polling, and there's a really interesting poll that my former colleague Alex Kohat put out last week, North Poll, which shows that I think he had 61% of Canadians polled thought that the Reagan ad about tariffs, which we on this panel all believed was a great ad, but perhaps ill-timed. 61% of Canadians believe that was either a good or great use of taxpayers' money. So the people around Carney understand that there is still a lot of benefit to being seen as being either oppositional to the Trump administration, or in this case, somewhat dismissive of the president himself. That's not necessarily a bad play for Carney. And I really think that's actually why he answered the way he did, and possibly believing that if we are seemingly disinterested, they will suddenly be more interested. We'll see if that bears out. But just because the prime minister is playing it that way publicly, Paul, does not mean that behind the scenes there isn't still some considerable effort underway to try to keep that dialogue warm, even if it means that for now that conversation around sector specific relief has run cold, and I think it has. The big event is still coming in 2026, and there is no universe where we cannot remain engaged across the board as we lead into that conversation about the renewal of, whether you call it CUSMA, USMCA, NAFTA. Like, that is right around the bend. So yes, cool, that's probably, he's playing it cool cat, but that doesn't mean that they are not also still extremely interested and engaged with American interlocutors at other levels.
Marci, I got to say, you're killing me with these Katy Perry references. I think I could actually show up for Beyonce or Taylor Swift lyrics, but I got nothing when it comes to Katy Perry.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, Paul.
Um, Allison, basically, I think there's two schools of political thought on Donald Trump and on Canadian relations with Donald Trump. One is that he is somebody that Mark Carney got elected on a promise to deal with, and that to the extent that he can't deal with Donald Trump, he's a failure. And the other school of thought is that Donald Trump is a random event generator, and you got no better luck against him than against a roulette table. What do you think Canadians' response is to Mark Carney's expressions of frustration when reporters even ask about this relationship?
I think that they're still giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think that this is really just two separate tracks of diplomacy that are happening right now. We have to keep working with the US on issues that affect our economy, but we also do need to keep moving forward. And that's kind of what I picked up from him in that particular statement from Johannesburg, was just keep working, keep advancing, and we can't wait for Washington to stabilize. So I think that it's clear that he's doing the right thing by diversifying our trading relationships and our security relationships. And I think that Canadians will give him some more patience. I think what's really going to matter at the end of the day is how he manages expectations here at home. And not only that, I mean, one of our biggest Achilles heels, it's like a horror movie where the phone calls coming from inside of the house. Our biggest problem is inside of the house. It's national unity is always precarious. He's going to have to make a lot of decisions that are going to cause a lot of rupture at home. And at the end of the day, that combined with how quickly these economic plans translate into affordability relief for Canadians is where I think the pressure point is actually going to be.
Okay. This government does seem to be getting in the habit of leaking that good news is imminent and then not delivering the good news. I mean, boy, if there isn't a memo of understanding between Danielle Smith and Mark Carney on Thursday, that's going to be like 6 or 7 strikes and you're out, I think. Garry, If you were running that shop, wouldn't you tell people to shut up a little bit?
This is the overpromise and underdeliver problem that this government has had right from day one. This has been an ongoing challenge, and you better believe that Danielle Smith wants that MOU in place by Thursday because she has her annual general meeting on the weekend of the United Conservative Party, and we all know that the United Conservative Party AGMs can be a cranky sort of meeting, and there are a number of people in that world who say you can never trust a liberal to deliver. And that separatist or sort of anti-Ottawa sentiment in the UCP, they are looking to Danielle saying, look, you said you were going to deliver a pipeline, you better deliver a pipeline. So she wants to go in there with that piece of paper saying, I delivered, because it actually helps the prime minister in any sort of national unity issue in dealing with Alberta separatism, and all that whole issue. But this is an ongoing problem, as you rightly noted, is overpromise, underdeliver, and at some point it is going to hurt them. It can't not.
So we're back now in the House of Commons. The last time the House of Commons sat, it was an unusually kind of spicy scene for a little bit. The Liberals managed to bag 1.5 floor crossers. They got Chris D'Entremont, and they got whatever's going on with Matt Jenner. That was a couple of weeks ago. Marci, do you think the government is now pretty safe as it goes through the rest of the confidence votes on the budget? Do you think there might be even more surprises coming, or did the mess of the Matt Jenner situation? I mean, if I was thinking of crossing the floor, I'd be a lot more nervous now than I was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't be banking on many more conservatives coming over. That said, there are representatives from other parties. New Democrats are sitting effectively as 7 independents. I recognize they still meet as a caucus, but they are not currently a recognized party in the Commons, and so there could be individuals in there, some of whom actually voted with the government on the budget, who could find themselves more interested in being part of a government and delivering on key promises rather than sitting out in the cold the way they are. So, I mean, just bear in mind, it's not only a conservative game. There can be individuals from other parties, even from the Bloc Québécois, hypothetically, who find their way over to the Liberal tent. The Liberals always have a big tent, as we all know. And so I wouldn't say that there may not be any more floor crossings, but like I said, I'm not betting on more conservative floor crossings anytime soon. Is the government safe? I think so for now. The government, look, Mr. Carney has, been running, as we've talked about for many months on this show, is effectively running a de facto majority government. What we saw from him in the lead up to that showdown, sort of at the OK Corral, was that he was very comfortable and confident staring down the opposition, effectively daring them to mess with confidence votes and to inadvertently render us or intentionally render us into an election scenario. So I think the government feels pretty confident. I think they are going to continue to operate the way they are operating. We can debate whether or not that's the right way to proceed in what is still actually a minority parliament, but I don't think they are very concerned with respect to the budget, the BIA, whether there's a second BIA that drops. I think that set of votes into the new year is most likely safe for now. And of course, we're into this new, interesting upside down world where we have the budget in the fall, and in the spring, we have an economic update, which at this point, because this is all new to all of us, we don't know if there will also be implementing legislation affixed to that spring economic statement. So there may even yet be another series of confidence votes in the spring. Too early to say, but I think for this first tranche, let's call it from now through to February, I think we're safe.
Allison, my read of the confidence vote last couple of weeks ago was that just about everyone has made it clear they don't want to have an election. The NDP caucus came out and said they don't want to have an election. Elizabeth May voted for the least environmentalist budget in the last dozen, and sure looked like the Conservatives didn't really want to have an election. Can we all climb down from general quarters and relax a bit about the longevity of this government?
I think it'll certainly last until the new year. Probably the only party who could deal with an election right now would be the governing party. As we mentioned in the first question, Carney's still got some goodwill going on with the conflict with the United States. I don't think he's run out of that faith yet, and he may even get a majority. He can run on his budget. I think actually he'd probably be in the best shape to go into an election right now, and that may be why he seemed so confident with this budget going through. But can any of them rest on their laurels? I don't think so. I think the Liberals have to operationalize what is essentially a political document and show how they're going to do it. Get that infrastructure money out the door. Mr. Poilievre needs to get some caucus discipline back quite quickly, and not in the way he's done it before, where if you see a Conservative MP, you ask them to blink if they're okay. I think he's got to restore that energy and excitement for his leadership, and also redefine himself, figure out what his policy message is vis-a-vis Mark Carney, because he's still running against Trudeau, and Trudeau's on a yacht with Katy Perry. So it just doesn't make a ton of sense. And for the NDP, they should be quite vigilant. I mean, they need to elect a new leader, yes, but also with every decision that Mr. Carney makes, and as we've seen in many articles this week, there are more and more red Tories going into his camp. He's going to make decisions eventually that's going to disappoint his progressive wing. And there's no better chance for the NDP to be waiting for that. I don't know that they've had that opportunity since the Martin era with the Liberal government.
Garry, is there some unwritten rule that you can't just say you don't want to have an election? Like the sort of curtain play that Scheer and Scott Reid did was, a little goofy. Can't you just say we don't like this budget, but we'd rather stay here and complain about it?
Well, this was my point. That's exactly what I would have said. I would have said, look, this is a terrible budget for the following reasons, A, B, C, D, and E, and whatever reasons you can conjure up those. And it's very fair to say that. But it's also fair to say, I think, that the country does not want an election at this time, and neither do we. And we're going to, keep holding this government to account and move forward. I mean, it kind of reminded me that scene from Austin Powers where Scott Evil says, well, let's just deal with him right now, and Dr. Evil says, no, I'm going to construct a very complicated and easily escapable method here, very contrived way forward. It just seemed like there was a lot of political kabuki going on, and I say that also in the lead up to the vote. I never thought we were having an election this fall, and the amount of ink that was spilled talking about we're going to have an election, we're heading to an election, there's no doubt we're having an election. I just thought it was like totally overbaked. Now, we are going to have more confidence votes this fall, not just BIA. We have supplementary estimates later this fall, and before March 1st, we're going to have supplementary estimates. So those are confidence votes as well. But I think we are sort of, we've had this one moment in time, and I think from here on in, we are going to see a lot less drama about it, because I think people are going to say exactly that. Now is not the time for an election. So I don't know why, people just didn't say that off the hop.
Yeah. I think you get bonus points in the contemporary environment for just saying the thing. I think everyone is so busy doing the Dr. Evil. Dr. Evil's son? What was his name? Steve Evil?
Scott Evil.
Scott Evil.
Yeah.
I almost got that reference. Everyone's so busy doing the fancy thing, and they just say, well, I don't want an election. Do you want an election? I don't want an election. But there will one day be an election, which means that every party is going to need a campaign manager. And Pierre Poilievre is thinking ahead, or finally drawing some lessons from when he thinks back. And the news came out via Brian Lilly and the Toronto Sun over the weekend that Steve Outhouse is going to be the new Conservative campaign manager. This is somebody we all know, and I believe it's safe to say we all like. Marci, what do you make of the selection of Steve Outhouse as Conservative campaign manager?
I think it is safe to say that we all like Steve. Look, your listeners may be surprised that for those of you who are not in the fray day to day, that in fact we do operate across party lines. We know one another. If you are a fellow traveler in this very bizarre life that we all lead in federal politics, you do tend to meet the others on the other side of the aisle who are practitioners, active practitioners of the same kind of life that you lead. So, look, I think Steve is a really smart choice for the Conservatives for a number of reasons. The first of which is, to your point, Paul, looking in the mirror, being able to derive some lessons learned from what the recent lived experience was on campaign. And there can be no question, and I say this not knowing those as involved in the last campaign as I do know Steve, but just as I go forward, when you have mounted a campaign that is successful in many respects, upping your vote share and coming back to the House with many more seats than you had when it was dissolved. That is good news, and it means some of what you were doing was the right thing. But there can be no doubt that the leader being unsuccessful in his own riding, the leader's continued popularity numbers being a drag on the ticket, something had to give. So, at minimum, the lesson learned has to be that you need some fresh perspective. And that's that's what I perceive to be some of this move with Steve. So it is a bit looking back in the mirror and charting a path forward. Steve has a very strong recent track record in terms of delivering on campaigns. But most importantly, Steve is change. And the Conservatives clearly needed change in this moment. So he represents change. And I think that's a positive. And I think the Liberal Party needs to take a good, close look at how effective campaigns that Steve has run, how effective they've been in recent days in order to map their own electoral strategy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the Liberal campaign in last spring was kind of a shambles. At least they weren't actively insulting the people who were writing and talking about the campaign, but that was about the best that could be said. And I do wonder whether there's a light bulb's going to go on over someone's head in the Liberal Party, say, well, maybe we should find someone to run our campaigns too.
I would assume so.
Okay. Garry, you worked with Steve Outhouse quite recently. Tell us about that, and tell us whether it's possible to sort of guess what influence he might have on Poilievre and on a national campaign.
Yeah, Steve, I've known for many, many years. I worked with him on Parliament Hill when he was a chief of staff, and I was a chief of staff in a variety of different roles. And most recently, he was helping to run my Get Out the Vote campaign in Nipissing Temiskaming. And we really, really used his brain and his political skills. And in fact, we got more votes than any of the other parties on election day. It was the advance polls which did us in. So, Steve really helped us with our Get Out the Vote. So I can speak from personal experience, what a pro he is, and not just the campaign, but my past history. The one thing I've been really surprised about over the last 24 hours is the social media reaction from diehard Poilievre supporters and conservative voters who are saying, yes, this is a great move, not just about Steve, but it shows how strong Poilievre is in terms of getting ready for the next election. This is exactly what we need. It's actually enthused, I think, the conservative base, which I did not expect out of it. But it's enthused the conservative base in a way which I think says, Poilievre is thinking about the next election and how to get over that hump. And so I think it's been a good move, not just obviously for Steve, but for Mr. Poilievre as well, especially leading into the leadership review, which is taking place in January. And look, there's no doubt there are some serious structural issues with how the campaign was run. I'm sure Mr. Outhouse has been seeing a lot of this or hearing a lot of that over the past recent history. And so there's a lot of lessons learned from the campaign that the party needs to take on board for the next election, whatever that is. But yeah, it's being really, really welcomed. And I was pleasantly surprised by seeing how energized the base of the Conservative Party was about his appointment.
Can I just add very quickly? I
Yep.
think if you're not going to change the leader, you have to make a big change on staff. Like one of those two things had to give. So this is clearly what was the give.
He, like on the left-right spectrum, which is a unreliable tool at best. He's not a particularly more moderate conservative, right? He's a very religious guy. He ran Leslie Lewis's leadership campaign, and he was not afraid of running on social issues in New Brunswick and in Alberta. So he's a sunnier face on, I think, an issue set that a lot of conservatives are comfortable with.
I think he's aligned definitely with Mr. Poilievre, but interestingly, he did a podcast recently with David Hurley where he talked about he had originally been a liberal and was originally a public servant who seconded into the one of the Harper government ministries. I think it was Fisheries and Oceans or whatever, and really enjoyed working in politics and eventually made the switch over to becoming a conservative. So it's not like he's been a 30 plus year diehard conservative. He's been a public servant. He says he was a former liberal. So it's been interesting to see sort of that conversion over time. So,
Allison, all this motion in the Conservative Party, it leads me to wonder whether we've got any sense of how the NDP race is shaping up so far. I saw that my friend Avi Lewis wants to nationalize everything. He will disagree with that characterization, but do we have yet any sense of how the NDP race is shaping up? I know there's a debate on Thursday in Montreal, and maybe that's the first chance a lot of us are going to get to catch up to the thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the debates will, help the lesser known candidates identify and brand themselves. I think early momentum tends to break towards Heather McPherson. She's the most experienced, considered fairly reasonable in Ottawa, and clearly wants it and is working hard for it. So if I was just to sort of take a look and see, I mean, Avi is great at media and messaging, but in terms of an overall vision for the country, that's probably a bit more palatable to a broader tent of people. I think Heather probably has a lock on the message early on.
Okay. Well, that's the view from where we sit as these guys get back to work. Thanks everyone for joining me, and we'll talk again soon. Have a good week.
Thank you.
great to be with you.
Thanks, Paul.